It is New Year's Eve, or as we like to call it, Sherlock Eve, I guess, because tomorrow is the day Sherlock is back, the day that the Empty Hearse premieres, and I am a little late, but I am doing my Reichenbach Fall review. This episode was written by Stephen Thompson and directed by Toby Haynes, and came out on January 15th, 2012. Now, this episode is obviously a heartbreaker. It's emotional. It's probably the most emotional episode. It is the most emotional episode of the show, and it does an amazing job as that. This is definitely one of my favorite episodes of the whole show. Story-wise, it's got perfect pacing. It feels like one construct story. Out of all the episodes, I feel like this one feels like a movie the most. It's consistently entertaining, and it's filled with monumental moments. However, I will say that the first time I watched it, I was a little confused, and I felt a little lost at a couple things, and it took me a second time to pick up on those things that I missed. That could just be me, but I also felt the episode was moving very quickly, so that could also be it. Now, the beginning of John at his therapist obviously sets up this melancholic tone that we feel throughout the episode, because we already know that Sherlock died and that John thinks he's dead, and having that knowledge on your head while you're watching this really puts you down. Now, the scene where Moriarty steals the crown jewels and opens up the bank, that was brilliant. I was shocked. I was amazed, actually, at the same time. Him dancing to La Gazaladra, I think the classic song is called, was absolutely hilarious, and just the way it was filmed, and like just how he looked like he was having fun. He's insane. And the way that, then, Lestrade, it's not my division, just all the things that happened in that scene were very in tune to the La Gazaladra song. And of course, the court case that comes after it was absolutely hilarious as well. Sherlock literally cannot control himself when he's being insulted on his intelligence. That was actually really brilliant. And John trying to tell him not to. That was great. But it was also really scary because you're wondering, how did he get away? How did he be proven not guilty? And having this perfect sequence of two brilliant minds facing off each other is so interesting. I was listening to every word. It was so brilliantly written. You have to wonder how this is the same person who wrote The Blind Banker. The Mycroft-John scenes in this episode, too, are also really well done. I feel like this episode really succeeds acting-wise. Everybody does a phenomenal job. I mean, usually that's the case, but they really stepped up their game for this final dramatic episode. I didn't realize that I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly, Diogenes Club was actually from the book, so that was a really funny use from that. The children kidnapping case scared the hell out of me, if you want me to be honest. It got me to the core, because they're children, and they had to eat mercury poisoning. Like, I was scared, really scared. That was actually even scarier than some of the Hounds of Baskerville for me, because that's not scary like spooky. That's scary like, these are children's lives, and Moriarty is insane enough, but smart enough to put the blame on Sherlock, because Sherlock is so brilliant that it's so unbelievable, like Sally says, that he would do this, that they actually end up thinking that it's him. That scene in the cab when Sherlock needs to think on his own, but Moriarty's just got him in his little web, just like he said in the court case. He's a spider with a huge web. Just the fact that Moriarty is driving that cab, and the Sir Balstalot story, the whole idea of the Grimm's fairy tales. A fairy tale needs a good old-fashioned villain. Like, the theme of this episode is so brilliant. And you could just see things are getting worse and worse along the way. Lestrade and the others almost don't believe in Sherlock. They're actually arresting him. And the fact that these horrible moments are surrounded by moments of humor, but very little moments of humor, when John punches the chief police, which was great. That's a good job at trying to lighten things up a bit, but overall, this episode just has such a dark tone to it that while still fun to watch, overall, you're gonna remember the ending, and then when you remember the ending, you just don't want to watch the rest of it. The ending is still hard for me to watch. Do I really need to talk about the rooftop scene? I'll talk about the Moriarty-Sherlock conflict. Again, great chemistry between Benedict and Andrew. Sherlock thinks he's got it, or we think he's got it. Like, you don't know what they're thinking. They're just too smart for us to understand, and that was done really well, especially the surprise when Moriarty kills himself. That was unexpected. I refuse to talk about the John rooftop that's for another video, or just never to talk about, really. Quick thing, if you want my theory on how he survived, I believe that it is the rubber ball theory. And proof, look at the date of this video, proof that I haven't seen it yet, but I'm putting my money on the rubber ball. But the final monologue of John in the graveyard, yeah, let's just save those for the characters. Now, there is a lot to talk about with the characters in this episode. Everybody has a role. Everybody has an importance to this climactic end of the reign of Sherlock Holmes. Starting with Sherlock, you can see how he is slowly unraveling with this. This is not a game he's willing to play. He even says that, and that's crazy. Sherlock is always willing to play the game. You can start to see him slowly unravel as his reputation and his friends start to not believe him, especially when he thinks that John might not believe him. It's funny because throughout the episode, he's always saying, I don't care what other people say, it doesn't matter what. He even tells John, why does it matter to you? But once he thinks that John might be falling into his trap, he starts to lose it. And we never see Sherlock lose it like this either.
You're worried they're right about me?
No.
That's why you're so upset you can't even entertain the possibility that they might be right. You're afraid that you've been taken in as well.
No, I'm not.
Moriarty is playing with your mind too. Cut you free! What's going on?
Like that scene, and when John is given proof that Richard Brooke is real, he starts to panic and says, stop it now. Moriarty is literally burning him to a crisp, and once he thinks he finally has it, figures out his final solution, Moriarty still finds a way to force him to jump. Even though you know Sherlock wins in the end, did he really win? He saved his friends' lives, of course he won, but he had to give himself up in the process, and it truly was the final problem. Now, John, oh my god. Words cannot describe my pain for this character, okay? It's just ridiculous. You can see he truly cares for Sherlock's reputation, despite Sherlock not caring at all. Props to Benedict, first of all, for Sherlock. Props to all the acting, but Martin Freeman, in this final graveyard scene, it's so heartbreaking, and it's so true. And when he says how he's more human than any human he's ever known, and how he owes him so much, you can tell that Sherlock meant so much to him. And those words that are never said, well, clearly those words are, I think those words are he's his best friend. He wouldn't tell his therapist, but I think that's what it is. And I think he might say them in The Empty Hearse, but can I just watch The Empty Hearse now? I never thought I'd say that, but I need to watch The Empty Hearse. I need to see this reunion, no matter how angry John is. I felt like the scenes with him and Mycroft were written very well as well. It gave John real personality. He had wit, he had humor. And in that last final Mycroft moment where he's disappointed in Mycroft for giving Moriarty the perfect ammunition, that's a really dreadful scene that Mycroft just screwed up. And having Mycroft be concerned for his brother, but because of their sibling rivalry, not just going to him for help, I think is absolutely ridiculous. And since this is the day before the Empty Hearse, I would like to say my theory that I think Mycroft knows Sherlock is alive. I think he has known for a long time since it's happened. I think he either knew about it or did something to help him faking his death. Moriarty is truly insane. Andrew Scott deserves that BAFTA. Every line he says is pure brilliance, so huge props to the writing again, but it's not even about the writing with Moriarty. It's not. It's his mannerisms, it's how he moves, it's the dance he does, it's just how insane he is on that rooftop. He goes from this to this in a second. He's like constantly changing and shifting in his face, his facial expression, especially in the first Sherlock confrontation when Sherlock says, I don't like riddles, and then he says, learn to. And he just stares like that for a couple seconds. Sally is on my last nerve, but at the same time we understand, and she needs to keep the idea that Sherlock is a threat present. And nobody wants to think about it, but she's willing to think about it. And while we all hate her for doing that, she is truly concerned for the people. And we have to remember she is a cop. And of course, Lestrade, it breaks my heart that he would even remotely think that Sherlock would do that. I'm interested to see what he's going to do in The Empty Hearse. Not even if he's in it a lot. I'm not even asking if he's in it a lot. I'm interested to see how Lestrade reacts, because I don't think Lestrade knows. Now we know that Anderson really regrets what he did, thinking that he entertained the possibility that Sherlock was the killer. And I felt like Kitty was an unexpected surprise as well. She was a new character that we're probably never going to see again, but she's really important. She really she mirrors the cruelty that Sherlock has, and she even, you know, gets back at him for it by saying, you repel me, just like how Sherlock said it to her, and I really like that symbolism, that she was turned away from Sherlock's cruelty and then turned to his own enemy. she became his enemy because of how he acted to her, and that really says something. I do somewhat sympathize her because she's a neutral character. That's what's interesting about her. She's neutral. She's doing what she thinks is right, but she's a reporter and she needs the job. So it's interesting how this one woman can end up affecting Sherlock's life so much from one mistake in a bathroom. Molly Hooper, man. Molly Hooper. This is her best episode. This is why she's my favorite minor character in general. She's amazing. The scene where she's talking to Sherlock, Louise really brings so much genuine emotion into this role, and you could see it on her facial expressions, and I don't count, and you do count Molly in this episode. She is truly amazing, and huge props to her. Huge props to Molly. Now, this episode is done by a different director. He was the director of Doctor Who episodes like Angels in Manhattan. Do I need to say more? He is a melancholic director. No, I think he does a very good job with the direction in this episode. You can slightly tell it's different, but not to a point where it feels like a different show. Not like with The Blind Bank. The effects this episode had were different too, like the newspaper spin. That gave us a real idea on how this was really a problem that the whole world was starting to know about. You have this constant presence of IOU everywhere, like on the spray paint on the wall, and on the windows across from Scotland Yard. And the final rooftop scene was directed very well. The shots and the angles, and that last shot where Sherlock, the light is hitting Sherlock and his back is turned to us when he realizes he has to jump. I felt like that scene where Sherlock deduces Kitty in the bathroom, and just how that scene was shot too, was very like condensed and tense, and really showed the anguish that Sherlock had at that moment and how he just did not want to deal with it. Basically, I think this episode is shot very visually, but you can tell that it's a little different. And I felt like some things that the Scandal in Belgravia did were a little more interesting. Now, with the music, I didn't feel like there was anything particularly special about the background music in this episode, except for how scary and tense the music was when they were on the rooftop and when Moriarty was saying his story about the Sir Balstalot. It's just so dreadful and so sad that when I have it on my iPod and I listen to it, I actually don't want to listen to it. It brings up all these horrible emotions, which I guess I should give it props for. I like the use of outside music too, like the song La Gazaladra that Moriarty dances to, and I don't know the song name that plays, but you know, when they're getting ready for the court case and it's like do 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 do, and it's like an odd tune and singing to it, but it was like different. It felt different, and that's cool. Overall, this is a phenomenal and an amazing episode. I, honest to God, had a very tough decision to make whether this or A Scandal in Belgravia was my number one. And the reason why this is number two for me is because with A Scandal in Belgravia, I feel like I could watch that over and over again and never get tired of it. And I'll never get tired of the Reichenbach Fall either. That's not the right word. It's very heavy. It's very emotionally heavy, and you do have to kind of focus on it to understand the story. With A Scandal in Belgravia, it feels like a lighter watch, but just as entertaining and just as brilliant. But it was a very hard choice, but I have to say that this is number two. Alright, so on January 2nd, I'll be posting my spoiler review of The Empty Hearse, and you can look forward to that on my channel. You can subscribe and watch my other Sherlock reviews. Bye!
You're ordinary. You're on the side of the angels.
Oh, I may be on the side of the angels. But don't think for 1 second that I am one of them.